Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our vendor presentation for DCKAP today. We have Chris Brackett, who is going to be your presenter. A couple of things I need to let you guys know. We are muted. You will be muted throughout the whole entire session, and we will have time for questions and answers at the end. At that time, you can raise your hand, which you can find in your control panel. I will unmute you, and you can ask your question directly, or we could type it into the questions box, and I'll read it off for you. Chris, can you go to that second slide for me, please? Thank you. I'm not going to read this off for you. You guys have seen it before. We just like to let you guys know that these vendor presentations are part of our effort to provide you with a valuable service. So if you like what you see today, it's your responsibility to contact the vendor directly. And that's because we never give out any information prior to the sessions. All right, that's all I need to let you guys know. So I'm going to let Chris go ahead and get started. Thanks.
Thank you, Suzanne, and thank you everybody for joining us today. Hopefully it's nice where you're at, as opposed to here where it's a little on the chilly side. So today I'm going to talk about streamlining data to help improve both your user experience, as well as also try and help boost your sales and profitability. All right, so real quick, just to kind of go over the agenda, I'm going to tell you a little bit about DCKAP and myself. I'm going to talk about what data is in the concept of this conversation. What does it mean to streamline data? Why you should streamline data? And then I always like to end these conversations also with a little bit about talking about the importance of data quality. A lot of times that can get overlooked, and it really has could have a negative or positive effect on the actual whole streamlining process. So at the end of it, I always cover that, and then I will open it up to any questions that people may have. All right, so a little bit about me. I joined DCKAP about 7 or 8 months ago. Prior to that, I actually spent 16 plus years working for an industrial and safety distributor. I started off working in the warehouse, worked my way up through, managed all the e-commerce business, multiple websites, integrations, helped bring in CRMs, and I also used DCKAP as well as a customer before I worked for them. To do an integration as well. So a little background on me. I've kind of sat in the shoes of some of you here who are on this presentation. So I can understand and relate to a lot of the questions and things that go through your head, or even the things you're working on or dealing with on a day-to-day basis. So that's a quick rundown on me. All right, so a little bit about DCKAP. So DCKAP has been around for actually 17 years now. We just recently hit that mark. We're actually pushing almost 200 employees nowadays, and we're pushing almost over 400 accounts served. So a little bit of numbers increased since this one. To give you a little back on our history, we started off as an e-commerce agency company, helping customers get online, build an e-commerce storefront. Through that process, through that experience, we did a lot of work with B2B customers such as yourselves. And we noticed that there was some needs in the industry for some products that were more geared towards B2B. A lot of products were built for B2C, and then were adapted to try and meet the B2B markets. And as most people know, that's not always the easiest transition, because they're not always the same. So in that process, we have developed several products that we kind of put into our product suite. First one is probably our flagship product, which is our DCKAP Integrator. It allows for seamless integrations between any two systems. We have a DCKAP Analytics tool, which is really just around e-commerce analytics. Our second kind of key product is our PIM. We've got a really good PIM offering, PIM solution that's really designed for the B2B markets. And then a new product for us as well is a headless solution that helps with your e-commerce site speeds, especially in instances where your website might be doing live calls directly from your ERP to your website. So, those are kind of our staple products. Like I said, the integrator and the PIM, in particular, are really two of our core products. All right, so we'll get into the heart of it here. So what is data? So data is any information in its digital form that can be processed, transmitted, that you can reference, you can analyze. In the sake of this conversation, it's really about that digital data. So it's really in the digital form. Nowadays, that's what most of the data is. There's still some pockets of, paper invoices and that sort of thing. But even that's kind of slowly dying out. Like a few examples when I talk about data is, product content, so like for e-commerce, descriptions, attributes, titles, names, maybe PDF documents to go with it, other forms of digital data or things like your inventory levels, your pricing, order information, order tracking, invoicing, your customer information, all that stuff. They're different forms of data. They all are incredibly important to us. Some more than others, but still, these are all forms of data, and there's, tons and tons more, out there that I'm sure you guys can think of as well. Like I said, it's really any data that's in a digital form that can be transmitted or processed. And data nowadays is becoming more and more powerful. A lot of big companies are built around data. A lot of small distribution companies want to be able to make use of their data, but it's a matter of getting in the right system to be able to process it, but also getting the right data in there to help you achieve those goals. So for the sake of this conversation, that's what I mean when I talk about data. All right, so what does it mean to streamline that data, right? So streamline that data is improvements to any speed, efficiency, accuracy in your processes for accessing, moving, storing your data. Some of the key points of that, is how fast can you move that data from one system to another. An example of this is kind of what I referred to when I talk about our headless is if your website's doing live calls, right? Maybe you're doing a live call for pricing, maybe you're doing live calls for inventory, right? How fast can you go to your system, retrieve that information, and bring it back into your system? If you're moving data back and forth, right, between two systems, are you doing it in the most efficient way possible? Some examples are, you go back to inventory, are you pulling inventory periodically or in real time? Because that can make a big difference, because inventory, as we all know, is definitely a touch point right now with a lot of supply chain issues. So, if you're pulling your inventory once a day, every couple days, or a couple times a day even, how accurate is that inventory? So when people are accessing your e-commerce solution, right, are they seeing accurate data? Or are you pulling that in real time? So every time your customer loads up that page, they see in stock, out of stock, or maybe even, the exact quantity you have in stock. And also streamlining your data also allows you to have single sources of truth for your data. That single source of truth doesn't always have to be in the same place. I'll hit on this a little bit later, but it can be your ERP, it could be your CRM, right? It could be other systems that you might have in place. But it allows you to set that single source of truth for specific data points as well. All right, so big question is, why would you want to streamline your data? Some of the big reasons is it can help improve your company's profitability, your efficiency, and then at the end of the day, hopefully your overall sales. I think all you will agree that you'd love to see better profitability. You'd love to see your customer, your employees, everything be more efficient. And at the end of the day, it's in our world, it's about the sales, and do whatever you can to help improve those sales. So now I'm going to kind of get into the different areas, right? So I mentioned, improve your profitability and efficiencies, right? So you may say, well, how can I improve my profitability with the streamlining of data? So, some of the places that I've seen, a lot of times it's around e-commerce. So, having that streamlined data that might go back and forth between your ERP and your e-commerce solution, or even your CRM, can allow your customers, if it's to your e-commerce, to be much more self-sufficient, right? They're not as reliant on possibly your inside sales, your customer service team, right? They become almost self-service, right? They go to the website, they can find their products, they can place the orders, it's gone. Depending on the functions of your website, right? They can go check on status of it. Hey, where's my order? Can I get shipping information? What's my pricing today? Hey, I need to copy this invoice, right? If you're streamlining your data from your ERP into your e-commerce solution, all that stuff is now right at your customer's fingertips, where, sometimes currently, but even in the past, right? Anytime they want that information, they're picking up the phone, they were calling your office, sending an email, checking the customer service team, right? And that's all takes up time, bandwidth that you may or may not have, especially given current, employment situations where it's hard to find employees in certain areas, in certain sectors. So if that applies to you, then improve these efficiencies, right, really is important, because maybe you needed 5 people in customer service, but right now you only have 2 or 3 because that's all you can hire, you can find, right? By streamlining these processes, you can give your users a better experience, which can also help to minimize the strain of customer service teams. This also goes for your outside sales reps, possibly. In my previous world, our outside sales reps were constantly also calling a customer service team, hey, what's the status of this order? What's our inventory? Hey, can I get tracking on this? All kinds of questions like that. Streamlining your data to possibly your CRM system, or even to your e-commerce solution where your sales reps can go and get that information themselves, can also help to improve efficiencies, because they're not spending as much time on the phone with your own internal customer service teams, right? Allowing your customer service team to do other things. Streamline also can be a profitability because it can help reduce the errors as a result of communication issues between your customer service team and your customers. A lot of times, and some of you guys I'm sure all you can attest to this, sometimes your customers have their own terminology or their own verbiage for different things, and sometimes that doesn't always match with the customer service team. You got a good e-commerce solution where your customers can get all the information they want. They may just go to the website, find the item themselves, they get a picture, they get the description, they know for a fact that's exactly what they want, right? They place that order, boom, they got it, they're happy. They never had to tax your customer service team. The other thing that I've seen at times also is when the customers place the order themselves on the website, they take a little bit more accountability for it, right? So if the product is wrong, a lot of times it's that was my bad, I ordered the wrong thing, right? Sometimes they'll keep it and just send me the new thing. Sometimes they'll send it back to you, but they're more willing to cover the freight or something along those lines, to get it back to you. Where whenever they talk to customer service team, it's pretty much always becomes, oh, the customer service misunderstood me, the customer service ordered the wrong thing. So you kind of take some of that out of the equation. That being said, it doesn't solve all the problems. You're still gonna have customers that say, oh, your website wasn't good enough, I couldn't find it. But I've definitely seen where that can help reduce that as well. Streamlining some of your information. We've all seen improve accounts receivable cycles, allowing our customers access to invoices, and even the possibility of paying their invoices online can help reduce those cycles, because they're not calling you looking for an invoice and you have to mail it to them, and then once they get it, they then send a check in the mail, and the check can take 5 to 7 days depending on the post office, right? If that can all be done online, right, they get the invoice right away, they can pay the bill right away if they choose to. Once again, customers like to stretch things out, as we all know, so it's not a hard and fast rule, it's not a guarantee, but we have seen it. And then the other big thing too is I kind of hit on it earlier also, is while you streamline these processes, it creates for more profitability, more efficiency. The other thing it can do, especially in the employee crunch, is it can free up your current employees to work on other tasks. You can either reallocate to different departments, or maybe they can just focus on more things in their current role that they may not normally have time for, especially if they're running short staff. So, right, those are some places you can definitely improve your profitability, definitely improve your efficiencies. And those I put those together because they kind of go hand in hand, because the more efficient you can be, the more profitable you can be as well. All right, so now how does it help to improve sales, right? So by streamlining your data, you can definitely improve your overall sales, right? It gives you 24/7, 365-day order takers, right? Your customers have 24/7 access to place orders whenever they want. In my distribution company that I worked for prior to, this was becoming a really big deal as a result of, once again, employee crunches. There was a lot of people who were being forced to place orders that normally didn't. They couldn't get it done in a normal workday, so they were placing orders in the evenings, early mornings, overnight. Their orders were coming in from our customers at all different hours we normally wouldn't be open. So as a result of that website, they could place orders with us whenever they wanted. You don't have that same access. They might be less likely to use it. Or if you have an e-commerce solution that might not provide them with accurate pricing, inventory levels, they may go somewhere else where they can get that up-to-date accurate information. So once again, creating that really good user experience from an e-commerce standpoint is very heavily dependent, on your systems integration, right? How well you can get that data back and forth, how good your website is. And if you have that, really, opens you up to a global audience where people are looking for products. Nowadays, they're looking even more with inventory shortages, product shortages all over the place, right? They may have had someone they went to day in and day out. This is the distributor I always use, but now they don't have it, right? So now they're looking elsewhere. And by having that inventory and that accurate pricing right there on your website, possibly updated shipping information, right? These new customers can just go bang, 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 place the order with you, and then hopefully you can reoccur that customer in the future. Streamlining this data also can help increase your sales with existing customers, whether it's through upsells, cross sells, or just ease of use. We noticed that when we had customers who started buying online, we noticed uptick in sales from them, just a result of them being able to hop on the computer when they want, place the orders, upsell, cross-sell features that you may have on your e-commerce solution. A lot of those can be driven by integrations, pulling certain data points from your system that says, hey, this customer who's in this product group or this class, they fall under this, so show them these upsells or show them those cross sells, right? So you can use the integration features. You can use something like a PIM solution also to help do that, to try and increase your sales within your existing customers. The last place you can see it, and I kind of hit on just a second ago, is new leads for your sales team to transform into hopefully long-term reoccurring customers. What I mean by this is, you've got those people now more so than ever who are out looking for products. Whether it's because they can't find it somewhere else, they're hunting for a better price, whatever it might be, right? They find you on your website, they place the order. What happens a lot of times is the order goes into the system, your ERP system, it ships out, customer gets it, right? And maybe you hear from them again, but maybe you never hear from them again because it just kind of fell into no man's land, right? Now you can take that data and you can streamline it into a process that allows your sales teams to follow up on it, right? So maybe now your data seamlessly moves from your e-commerce to your ERP, but maybe also in certain scenarios like these, random customers, new account signups, right? You take that information and you slide it over to your CRM solution, right? Now in that CRM solution, you can set up, follow-ups for your sales team that says, hey, this order shipped on this date, 7 days after, follow up with them. Now your sales team can then, approach these customers, hey, did you get your order? Great. How'd you like it? Is it exactly what you wanted? Perfect. Is there anything else you need, right? So it allows for you to improve on that customer service experience for these new customers. Hopefully you, sell them on your company as a whole, and they come back time in and time again to buy more stuff from you. So, those are a couple ways that you can see improved sales without a doubt when you streamline your data, because having up-to-date information in e-commerce solution is imperative, and without it, it's really a struggle sometimes to get those sales, and customers are taking notice of it, and they want it, they expect it, the kind of the Amazon feel. They want to know that if it says in stock, it is in stock. So something to really think about for sure. All right, so you're not really sure where to start, right? Okay, well, how do I determine to streamline my data? How do I figure out how to do it? I'm not really sure, Chris. It sounds great, but I have no idea where to start or how to go about doing it. So, and this is a common question. I did several integrations when I was in distribution, and the first time I did one, that was my exact question. I was like, okay, I don't know where to start. I don't know who to talk to. I started Googling it, found some companies, started asking around. So once you kind of figure out a partner, it also, now you got to figure out, determine where does that data live? Whatever data you want to move from point A to point B, where does that data live, right? If it lives in multiple spots, you want to determine what would be the best central source of truth for that data. So obviously, if you have inventory on your website, you have inventory on your in your ERP system, maybe you're manually updating it now, or maybe just in stock, out of stock, right? You need to determine, do I want my e-commerce solution to be my central truth, my inventory, or my ERP? I think that's a pretty straightforward one, obviously. You want it to be your ERP, but you need to decide that. Same thing when it comes to like your customer data, right? You have customer data in your ERP system, you have customer data on your e-commerce solution, you may also have customer data, in your CRM, right? And sometimes all three, if you don't have the right process in place, can be different in piece of information. They're not updated with each other. So one gets updated, the two don't. Then, so that's another example of a place where, picking that central source of truth, whether it's your CRM or your ERP, right? That's going to be your central point of data. And when stuff gets changed, it's going to push out to the others. So that's a real important factor. And then, next is finding out the best way to go about integrating your systems to make sure that that central source of truth keeps all of your locations, your data locations, up to date. So that way you've got the consistency across all fields. So that's a couple of the places I always say to start. And these really are questions that are answered once you kind of figure out who your partner might be. Who you're going to work with. Are you going to do it in-house, or are you going to work with a third-party agency? Once you figure those out, then you kind of start working down this list from here. Right. Just to go over it again, a couple examples of it. And all these I show them as 2 ways with the arrows. Doesn't have to be 2-way. You can decide that, hey, for my company, 1-way works better. For instance, this is your customer data, right? You have your integration platform, you've got customer data in your ERP, your e-commerce, your CRM, like I talked about, and now you can push that data back and forth. If for some reason you wanted it to be just 1-way data, you can very easily say, hey, I want data to go both ways between my, e-commerce and ERP, but I only want to go 1-way to your CRM, right? A good integration solution will allow you to make those changes for whatever best fits your business model. One of the best reasons I always use as an example for, not doing always 2-way integrations is usually around customer data, and it's ERP to your CRM. Because at the end of the day, I didn't always trust my outside salespeople to not make changes in the CRM that would negatively affect my ERP, because my ERP was my central source of truth. So data would be pushed to my CRM, but only certain data points would get pushed back. If I thought it was anything that could have major implications on our ERP system, right, I wouldn't let it go back and forth just because I didn't have that complete trust in my outside sales team. But that being said, I did put processes in place so that they could make changes and would notify people internally who then could also process the changes. Another example is product data, right? So when it comes to e-commerce solution, having good data, is imperative. And a lot of times that data ends up living in multiple different places. Do you have it in your PIM, right? Do you have it in a CRM? Do you pull it from your ERP, right? Maybe you don't have a PIM. You're using the data in your ERP system to push to your e-commerce solution, or maybe you even I used to push product data to my CRM as well, so our sales reps could access our product catalog, get some base level pricing, high level inventory levels even, but right. So once again, these can all be 2 integrations, but when it comes to your product data, right, you really need to have a single source of truth for that product data. And a lot of times the ERP is not the best option for that, because a lot of times ERPs have character restrictions when it comes to your name or your extended descriptions, right? So it's really hard unless you can do a lot of customization to ERP to really allow your ERP system to be your central source of product data, especially if it's getting pushed to your e-commerce solution. So like I said, I'll get into it later on, but because having that quality data is incredibly important, especially when it comes to your e-commerce solution. At the end of the day, I always recommend, if you have the ability to have a PIM for that product data, because that can be your central source of truth. You can push that data to your ERP system, you push it to your CRM, right? You can even select bits and pieces you might want and have that pushed to your ERP system to allow your customer service team to have better experiences. But having that PIM can be really, really important, even in situations when it just comes to your e-commerce solution, because maybe you've got SEO specialists or people like that who need to have access to that product data, but you don't want to give them access to the back end of your e-commerce, right? You give them access to the PIM, they have access to what they need, they can make and update the changes, and that SEO information can then be pushed to your e-commerce solution or your ERP, or sometimes even multiple e-commerce solutions. But once again, it comes down to trying to pick that central source of truth, allow the data to move back and forth. Once again, I got 2A arrows on this thing, but you can very easily make them single way integrations if that's what best fits your business model and your company needs. I'm going to give a little more detail into some of our products real quick here, just because I think two of them really fit this discussion really well. The first one is our DCKAP Integrator. This allows really for those seamless integrations. You can automate the process of data flowing back and forth from one system to another. It's safe, it's secure, it's scalable. You can use it for multiple systems. It's very much customizable, or even you can really personalize it, is kind of the word I like to use a lot better for that. You can change your data flows. You can change how often your data flows. For instance, you could have your inventory and pricing be live calls, but then you could say, hey, right, order information. Right, I don't really need my order information in live calls, but I obviously don't want to wait, an hour to get that information. So you can set every 5 minutes or every 10 minutes, right, it goes and grabs all the order information from your e-commerce solution and pulls that data across. Right, your customer data. You may be like, hey, that only needs to be updated once or twice a day. Your product data might be, once a day as well, right? If you do an integration, one of the integrations we're starting to see a lot of is manufacturers are opening up APIs to their systems, right? So you're pulling data directly from your manufacturer, your supplier system, right into your own system. So in situations like this, maybe you're pulling pricing. Well, this may be different nowadays, it definitely is, but you might only need to check for pricing updates once a month, right? So you can set it so, hey, once a month, go here, check for pricing, pull it across, right? So it allows for the flexibility in that. Our integrator is easy to use. It's got a seamless designer flow. It allows for really easy mapping and modifiers. A great example of this is, for instance, maybe your e-commerce solution, takes your customer's name and it's in 2 fields, so it's Chris Brackett. But your ERP system, right, puts the name as a single field, right? So you can then create a modifier that says take first name, last name, combine it into one. So when it goes into your system, right, the naming convention is correct. You can also put things in place to do the same sort of thing for state or countries and things like that. But that flexibility is really important, especially in the B2B world, because there's so many variables that go into it. There's so much data, right? And you don't want to overtax your systems by taking everything real time or on a regular basis, because when you're hitting your ERP systems, that's whether it's on-prem or in the cloud, right? When you do that, it does take a little bit of bandwidth away from it, right? So you want to make sure you're getting that data as often as you want, but you're not putting too much strain on either of your systems that you may be pulling or pushing the data from. And our DCKAP integrator is incredible when it comes to that in terms of the flexibility, ease of use. You can be a basic database person and you can go in there and modify stuff and set some stuff up, right? Or if you're a real deep database programmer, right, we've got functions and features in there that'll work for you there as well. So, I've used several integration platforms as a distributor over the years. The DCKAP integrator was by far the easiest to use, and the simplicity also allows, if you have our team doing any kind of work, we can really get those integrations set up in a short period of time. Sometimes in 2 months or less from when we get going, we can have a complete integration set up and running for you. Obviously, those time frames vary a little bit depending on how much we're doing or the data that's pulling or the systems and that sort of thing. So, right, it's easiest to use when there's 2 open APIs on both ends, but we can even work with customers who maybe don't have open APIs, or one API on one end and a direct SQL database on the other side. So we've got a lot of ability to work within whatever requirements you and your company may have. The other thing I'm going to hit on real quick is our DCKAP PIM. It's a SaaS-based PIM solution, right? It can handle a lot of different products, images. It's got multi-language abilities. It's really easy to maintain your product data in there. There's a lot of nice functions and features in there, product completeness that you can set so that you know what products are missing certain data points you might need, or you can even say, hey, until a product gets to 60% completeness, don't push it to the website. In some cases, we have customers who have multiple websites. I've seen as many as 10 or 12 different websites, right? You can manage all your product content straight from our PIM, and then you can determine which products get pushed to which websites, right? So you're not trying to maintain product data in all the different websites. You can easily maintain it in one place and push that data across, right? We also offer connections with, for content aggregator or syndication companies. So if you're working with a company that provides product content for you, we can make direct links to them to pull that data right into the PIM, at which point you can either use the data as is, or you can personalize it to fit your needs, right? And it's a great central repository for all your product data. Even if you only have a single website, depending on what your e-commerce solution might be that you're working with, sometimes it's really hard to manage that product data in the back end of those e-commerce solutions, right? It's a lot easier in the PIM. It allows you to, send it off. It also allows for trackability, so if something gets changed, you can tell when it got changed, the time frame. And there's also the ability for a lot of rules and whatnot to be put in place as well if you want to restrict access to certain people to certain information. That's all available in our DCKAP PIM as well. All right, so now I'm going to kind of hit on the topic of importance of data quality, right? So you can have all these processes in place, right? You can have, the best integration tool on the market, and it's moving data back and forth, right? You can have a great PIM solution, you can have a great e-commerce solution, CRM, whatever it might be, and you're moving data back and forth, and all is wonderful. However, if the data you're moving isn't accurate, it's not consistent, it's not complete, right? That can all affect the quality of your integration or the process of streamlining that data. I always use the great example for that for me is, if you're pushing data to your e-commerce solution, right? You're pushing that product name, the descriptions, you're pushing that information across your e-commerce solution, right? If you're pulling it from your ERP system, for instance, that might have character limitations, so you've kind of had to shorten and abbreviate things in there. And if you push that to your e-commerce solution, your customers might not be able to find what they're looking for, right? You could have an amazing search function, right? Well, that search function works through your name, your descriptions, your extended descriptions, your attributes, right? It digs through all that stuff when your customer does a search, right, to try and bring them back the most relevant products to what they're looking for, right? But if you don't have that quality data in there, you don't have the right attributes, right? You're missing certain words from your descriptions, right? That can all affect your customer's ability for that search function to work. Another great example of this is when you get down to you're trying to refine your search, right? So you did a search and you typed in, I'm going to use abrasives because that's where it come from, right? I need sandpaper, right? And now you're left with a whole bunch of options. Right now you want to use your attributes to try and refine it down to what you want, right? You want to have consistency in those attributes. And the sandpaper ones I always love is one that I always love to use because, right, when it comes to the size of that disc, right? So if you're working with a disc, is the diameter 6 inches? Is the size 6 inches? Is the width 6 inches? Is the circumference 6 inches, right? There's a lot of variations in that. So as a result, if your customers have decided to go with diameter for 6 inches and you've got 50 products that have the size diameter, another 100 that are under the size, another 50 that are width, right? They're going to miss out on those other ones because they just selected diameter. So having that consistency in your product data. Another great one that I used to run into all the time in my world was like with masking tapes, right? A lot of customers, when they want a tape, they're saying 1 inch, 2 inch, 3 inch, 4 inch, up to whatever size they're looking for. A lot of tape manufacturers, they're in millimeters, 18, 24, 36, 48, 72, upwards and so on. So, right, you want to make sure you've got the coordinating data to match that, right? So if your supplier gives it to you, millimeters, you want to make sure you also have an attribute that puts that into size. So your customer can also determine, do I want 48 millimeter or do I want 2 inch, right? It's not exactly the same, but that's also how your customers are searching for it, right? So you want to be, cognizant of that as well. So, having that data quality is imperative. Moving that data back and forth is really important. Like I mentioned early on, data is very quickly has kind of become king. All major companies, if you ask them, they say, data is your most valuable resource, right? And that's no different for distributors. Whether you're a $1 million distributor, a $10 million distributor, 100 million, so on and so forth, right? Having that data is incredibly important, right? Being able to analyze that data is incredibly important, and it can be difficult for smaller distributors to be able to do that. Our solutions stuff don't allow for the analyzing that data. There's some great companies out there that can do it, but what we can allow for data to be consistently in the same spot, so that you can then use those other tools to analyze that data. One of the best examples I can think of is in my old world, I ran a daily backorder report, right? Every day I went in the office, ran a backorder report. It was everything our company had on backorder. I'd flip through it, pick out items that seemed out of place, right? And then I'd have to then take those items that seemed a little bit out of place from backorder. I'd have to go into a different system, right? And then check to see if I had any availability in my ERP system. If there was no information there, I then might log into my supplier portal, right? Look up the item, look up the order, right? Try and figure out, hey, when's it going to arrive? How long is it on back order? You guys probably all do this all the time. But every time I wanted to do one item, right? To do all that, I would probably spend, a solid 5 to 7 minutes probably per item. Pre-COVID wasn't a big deal because usually only a small handful of items that fall into that category. Since COVID, with all the supply chain disruptions and everything else going on in the world, the number of items on back order that might not normally have been back order had grown significantly. I mean, my back order report almost doubled in size in my last 2 years with my company. Now, if you can consistently streamline that data, right, to your central source of truth, and you're pulling data from your ERP system, right? You're pulling data, maybe from your manufacturer as well, right? And now you're pushing all that information right into, a data analytics tool, or even if you're just pushing into your ERP system and you're using something like Crystal Reports or built-in internal reporting systems that are built into your ERP system. By pulling this other outside data sources back into your ERP, it allows you to better make decisions, better buying decisions, right? So, I mentioned earlier on that we were seeing a lot of manufacturers who are starting to open up APIs from their systems to allow you to pull data, whether it's into your ERP or e-commerce solution, or CRM, wherever it might be, but allows you to pull that data in. Now, if I go back to my backorder report I used to run all the time, I can now take that same backorder report, but now since I've got data from my manufacturer in place, I've got that order data, right? I can tie that right into my report. So when I run my report right on that sheet, I can go and look and say, hey, these items are on back order. My system says I should have them here. My manufacturer system is saying this date. Okay, that's a gap. I need to try and solve that problem, right? So it allows you to better understand, better analyze your data in a quicker, more efficient way. It also allows you to stay ahead of things a little better, hopefully to cut off possible problems with your customers, right? You can now call your customer and say, hey, I'm now looking at my backorder report and this is saying it's not going to be in for 3 more weeks, right? Hey, are you going to be okay to make it through? So we need to try and find an alternative, right? That goes back to, this whole process goes back to streamlining your efficiencies, right? Making you more profitable, right? You're also giving a better customer experience, right? So that customer's like, man, these guys really got their stuff together. They know what's going on. They're ahead of me. right? I'm going to buy all my stuff from, right? Boom, now you're improving sales, right? So it all really kind of ties together in different ways, but it comes down to your ability to move the product data, the ability to access the data, your ability to store the data. And even if you're doing all that stuff right, if you don't have good, complete, quality data, right, it's not that it's all for naught, but you're not making the most of it, right? You're not getting your both biggest bang for your buck, which at the end of the day, between employee shortages and everything else in the world, right, everyone needs to be more efficient. We need to try and streamline those processes, to make sure we're not only servicing our customers, but we're being as profitable as possible. So that's kind of my spiel on product data. That's also kind of the end of my presentation. I'll leave you with a couple of key points. Whatever you decide to do, right, make sure before you just say, hey, integrate my system, find yourself a good partner, or if you're going to handle it internally, and make sure you ask the right questions, right? Make sure you know what you want your single source of truth to be, right? Make sure you know how often you want that data from point A to point B, right? Because those are all imperative in trying to decide where you want things to go, how you want it to go, and go from there. But at the end of the day, it's about making sure you've got the right partners that fit your needs, right? Because they should be able to also guide you through the process to make it as seamless as possible for you guys. Because at the end of the day, we're all shorthanded. I've been on the phone with technology companies who are short-staffed in customer service, so their IT guy is actually answering phone calls, so he doesn't have time to worry about the database as much. There's a lot of those going around where people are being forced to wear multiple hats, and there's only so much time in the day. So I'm going to leave it open up if anyone's got any questions at this point. I'll be more than happy to answer them. And I left my email address right there. If after the fact, or if you're listening to the recorded version, if you got any questions, something didn't make sense to you, feel free to reach out to me. My email address is right here on the screen. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions you may have. I'm always willing to chat. Like I said, I've been in your guys' shoes before, so I can understand some of your needs and what some of your pain points might be. So feel free to reach out. I want to once again thank everyone who is here and anybody who's going to listen in the future for listening in and taking the time to hear me speak. So I appreciate it. Thank you, and I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their day.